Hello, everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report. It's Tuesday's edition. Welcome back from a long Labor Day weekend. I hope everyone enjoyed the holiday and the time off, caught some college football action. Anyhow, in the world that we cover, politics, business, economics, and all things in between, it's never amazes me. Always first day back from a Biden weekend when we've got plenty of stuff to talk about. Drew, welcome back to the show. Thank you for hosting last time. Welcome back as my guest today.
Hey, it's great to be back with you.
Hey, listen, it just amazes me every time you come back the very first day from a weekend. There's almost like never enough time to get all the issues in. I mean, it's just crazy. And Biden's sitting here right now. He spent most of the time in Delaware. So
I know. It is remarkable. I mean, the litany of issues that just, nothing ever gets solved, right? That's what we always say. It's a new fire is lit, every day, and the previous ones are never extinguished.
Well, that's how Democrats like to remain in power. They always like the issue, never solving the problem. All right, Lenny, let's get to the divisive speech. I mean, he gave a speech. Drew, I'm telling you, that was among the worst. And again, we're highly critical of Biden, but that had to be among the top 10 worst speeches I have ever heard for its divisiveness, the tone, the tenure, and basically attacking half the population. What were your thoughts on that? I mean, to me, it was just negative all the way around.
Well, it was a speech that perfectly encapsulated the current makeup of the Democratic Party for sure. I mean, I thought that the only thing that Joe Biden was missing was a little mustache and a little bit of more energy. But, it is true. I think it's actually the worst and most dangerous speech ever delivered by a president in this country. It's one thing to attack an ideology or to, certainly, condemn certain aspects, but to go and condemn 70 plus million Americans as a threat to democracy. And it's not just that it's wrong to do and it's un-American, but it's also based on lies. I mean, the thing is that if you watch that speech, the things that he's condemning Trump supporters like myself of being, it's purely projection. I mean, they're the ones. I think that Donald Trump, when he responded, he said that no, Joe Biden is a threat to our democracy, and that's absolutely true. And that'll be borne out as we go through these issues. I will pay careful attention to point out why I'm not a Democrat as we go along today. How about that?
That's an easy one. I mean, I will never mistake you for being a Democrat. You don't have to worry about that. And I don't think anyone's ever going to mistake me for being it either. Hey, listen, 56% of Americans thought he was way off base there. I mean, look, you can have political disagreements. We have those. Okay. But to the personal attacks on people like you, myself, whether you voted for Trump or you're a Republican or you just support conservative causes, or even if you're a rhino, okay, people have their beliefs and they should not be attacked for those beliefs. That's the political discord. And effectively, here's where this was going. Biden's trying to do everything he can to keep Trump's name in the news, to quote, dirty him up, because Biden feels he's going to run against Trump in 2024. And he believes, I think mistakenly, that by tying Trump into these midterm elections, that it will bode well for Democrats. Drew, is my theory right, or am I totally off base here?
Well, it's all of the above. I mean, the Democrat strategies, they're never really specifically targeted. I mean, they kind of have a broad approach. It's almost like the shotgun, going out, spraying everything. And it is first and foremost about the midterms, because they can't run on their policies. They can't run on anything that they've accomplished over the last, 2 years when the midterms are here. Because if they did, I mean, all they would do is be condemning themselves. I mean, they have run away from the Afghanistan issue, right? That debacle, that botched withdrawal. I mean, why was that not being celebrated 1 year later, right? That was the big thing that Joe Biden accomplished. But of course, that was a failure too. The economy in ruins and everything. I just think that, I'm really concerned about, my fellow Americans out there that are Democrats that continue to support this stuff, because it really is political religion for them. I describe myself right as conservative because, my morals, they go beyond the Republican Party. I vote for people based on policies I want, but my ideology, my morals, they're unwavering. The Democrats don't have an equivalent of a conservative group in their own. They just go wherever the party goes. They don't push back on the party. If today they say, they change the definition of recession, if they go from, a 15-week abortion they're pushing to now, they want to abort the baby after it's out of the womb, the Democrats just go along with it. And here's the difference between, I think, you and I, Mark, and the overwhelming the Democrat voter is that they cannot separate a person from his or her politics, right? So in their minds, Trump is evil and Trump supporters are evil. It's not that, so we are bad people because we have bad, ideas. We don't look at them that way. We look at them as many of them, most of them, as good people with bad ideas or bad politics. And that's what's so dangerous about the Democratic Party, because they exercise this extensive control. It makes the Democrat voter a lot more easily manipulated, and they will buy lies. They will justify violence and wrongdoing because in their worldview, it's just, well, all Democrats are good, all Republicans are bad. And that's what's scary.
Yeah, and it sort of reminds me of what Rush Limbaugh used to say, where we refer to Democratic voters as low information voters. That's true. They are easily led by these policies. But here's the thing that is not making any sense, Drew. And we had the mainstream media trying to tell us all Labor Day weekend, things are tightening. Democrats even have a chance to take back the House. They're going to take the Senate. And I'm looking at this. My polling data is not indicating that at all. I'm looking at right track, wrong track. 29% of the American people think the country's on the right track. And I'm saying, who are those 29%? 65% saying we're on the wrong track. Well, my guess is the 65% is made up of mainly Republicans and independents, and the 29% is made up predominantly of Democrats. After all, the political breakdown in this country is roughly 32% of the country is Democrat, 30 is Republican, the balance is independent. So that's how I sort of tie in these numbers. And then I look at a couple polling data, Drew. Polling out today shows Biden 39% approval, 59 negative, down 20 points. Rasmussen polling, which you and I have talked about, which we preach on this show, is a good polling outfit. They've got Biden at 45, negative 53. So if I average them, I'm saying his polling is in the low 40s right now. A lot of the media is trying to tell us, well, it doesn't matter that his polling's in the low 40s. It's not going to affect the midterms because people are going to vote regardless, and they're not holding Biden to these standards. Drew, I've been through election after election. I'm not buying one thing of what the mainstream media is trying to sell us. What's your thought on these poll numbers, right track, wrong track, and Biden?
Well, I think they're delusional. And of course, polling can be easily manipulated. It's tough because, we rely on them and we want to believe the ones that are favorable to us, as well. But you do have to take them all with a grain of salt. And especially given, what the media is willing to do, suppressing the biggest scandal in American history with a Hunter Biden laptop. You think that they wouldn't come up with some numbers that are a little bit skewed artificially in favor of Biden to make him look better? But I want to hone in on something you said, because I think it points out the delusion of the Democratic Party, right? So they say, as you said, correct me if I get this wrong, but it won't matter because this isn't a presidential election, right? It's not Biden versus Trump. And yet they're trying to make, and they've admitted in their own media sources that they are trying to make this about Biden versus Trump. So which is it? This is such a typical thing of the Democrat. I can't imagine having the brain of a Democrat. I would feel like my head was going to explode all the time just because I was so confused, telling myself these different conflicting narratives.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. And again, this is going to sort itself out. When I always look at what the generic ballot says. That to me, that's a telltale more than the presidential approval rating. Traditionally, if a Republican was anywhere from 0 to, we'll call it -2 to +2, that would bode very well for the election because Republicans are traditionally undercounted in these generic ballots. I got news for you. Real Clear Politics has it at 0. Rasmussen has it at +5. Trafalgar has us near +4. So when I start looking at these numbers, I'm saying the mainstream media is out there. They're trying to influence public opinion rather than reporting public opinion. And again, we're in the 1st of September. There's going to be more news hit between now and election day. But I'm with you. I don't see the accomplishments. Going back to what you said, there was no celebration over Afghanistan. If anything, there was mourning and sorrow at the debacle it was. The only thing that the Democrats can tout, in my opinion, is gasoline prices have come down 85 some odd straight days. That's a fact. But that hasn't brought down the overall level of inflation. It's helped, but we're still sitting here somewhere between 7.5% and 8%. That's gigantic by any standard, and it is affecting the poorest Americans. But let me move on to something here, okay? I mean, I'm pulling it to death. Trump's comments, vicious, divisive, hateful. Those were Trump's comments about Biden's speech. Now I want to get into some substantive issues here with you, Drew. This student loan thing is rapidly turning into another Biden debacle. I mean, if you're a borrower and you have student loans, great. That may help you. It may help if the courts ultimately approve this. But right now, in excess, Drew, of 60% of Americans say, hey, this is not fair and it's not the right way to go. People that paid off their student debts, people never borrowed in the first place. And the Biden administration is lying to the American public, telling, well, this is going to be paid for by other areas where we save money. Drew, you and I know that is an outright fabrication. There's no pay-fors in this. And there are projections this is going to run. Again, these are 10-year figures, $500 billion or higher over 10 years. I mean, give me your thoughts. How's this playing out with you and conservatives in general?
Well, I think it's important to focus on the biggest issue of this, which is the unconstitutionality of it. The president of the United States does not have the authority to issue an executive order or to give any kind of order to just pass along someone else's student debt that is a result of their personal decisions, a contract that they had, and just give that to the other Americans. I don't think this is going to play well. I think that 14.5% of Americans had student loan debt. So now they're going to put the rest of us, the majority of Americans, on the hook for those people's student loans. And what, $10,000? I'm sorry, you can't pay back $10,000. I have made foolish decisions in my own life before in my 20s, and I found myself in $12,000 worth of debt. It was a very, very painful experience for me. So I'm not trying to be somebody who's not compassionate here, because I can actually empathize. But I paid it off. And it was hard. And in my case, it was going through a bank, right? And so the interest rates made it feel oftentimes like I wasn't even putting a dent in it. But you know what? I did it. And that's the difference. That's conservatism. I believe in personal responsibility and accountability. Okay. And here's the other thing. This isn't going to solve the problem of tuition costs. This is another issue. Right. It's going to encourage other people to continue borrowing in the future because they're going to anticipate that Joe Biden or some other Democrat is going to swoop in and forgive their debt. Right. They're not putting the colleges on the hook. The colleges are going to continue to raise tuition, knowing that the taxpayer is going to pay it. And here's the biggest issue for me after the constitutionality thing. What this represents to me is this unholy alliance between academia and the Democratic Party. Right. The Democrats want as many Americans as possible to go to their universities because all they are 4-year indoctrination centers. They are churning out new Democrat voters. And so now we are in the business, the American taxpayer, of subsidizing the salaries of the professors and teachers, of the administrators at these left-wing schools so that they can indoctrinate them to hate us. I have a significant problem with that.
I have a major problem with it. Not only that, but some of these Ivy League schools have tens and $20 billion endowments. I think the average Ivy League school is somewhere around $15-16 billion, topped out by Harvard and Yale north of 20. That's just the endowment. So, yeah. I mean, to me, it's everything that you just said. It smacks as un-American. And I believe in this case, you and I talked about this once before, Pelosi was correct when she said Biden doesn't have the authority to do this. Well, the interesting piece now is will a group find stature and sue? Will this thing make its way through the courts? Because I think if it does, this will never see the light of day. But that's to be determined at this point. And I got to tell you something, Pennsylvania, it's underwater 60-40 in Pennsylvania. Now, will that be enough to sway votes? I don't know, but Pennsylvania is traditionally a blue-collar state. Drew, I remember the day, it wasn't 20 years ago, where people that generally came out with college degrees were Republicans. That is completely switched now. And the Republican Party is now the working person's party. And the Democratic Party, again, this is not to be a blanket overall, but the Democratic Party is more the, quote, college educated, higher educated. They try to put that out there, and it's not true across the board. I mean, I think you and I are fairly well educated, and we're Republicans. Okay, so excluding Drew and myself, we're not in that category. But the media portrays it that way, and frankly, this is the one thing where the media portrayal is generally correct. I just think the whole thing stinks to high heaven, and I hope that people will stand up against this, because I agree with you, Drew. It's un-American and it's not right.
No, but you know what the problem is going to be? It's just like every time some welfare program is passed, Republicans are fearful of touching it because they get beaten down. I mean, what's going to happen if you're looking at midterms, right? I mean, let's speed up the time frame. Let's say this is a done deal and this 10,000 is going to be forgiven. Forget the fact that states are going to tax it and so on and so forth. But let's just say it's a done deal. Everyone's getting their 10,000 back. What are Republicans going to come in now and say, well, this was unconstitutional, it was wrong, and it's actually going to make everything worse for all of you in the long term, but we're going to have you pay that 10,000 back. It's never going to happen. And that's the problem with this too, is that these giveaways, they become permanent and expected. And unfortunately, the average American citizen, and it's not just Americans, it's just human nature. We're self-serving. Okay. And so that person would be like, well, screw that. I'm not voting for Republicans, even if they're on the right side, because I want my 10,000 back.
The question is, will young people turn out to vote, even though they're being bribed by the 10,000? I have my doubts in midterm elections, but we'll see. All right, let me move on a little bit here. Let's talk a little bit international. What's going on in Europe, Russia, a lot of developing news there. Gazprom, folks, which is the Russian giant oil and gas company, they have cut off gas completely into Europe. Drew, that's going to have major ramifications if that issue is not fixed, particularly as we head into winter. The United States is doing what it can to help import liquefied natural gas into Europe, but when you rely so much, and 22% of Europe's energy comes from that pipeline, Drew, there's some problems that Europe's going to face, and it may exacerbate a recession that I think is Europe's already in, and it's certainly going to make the recession that the Russian economy's in worse.
Well, look, the European overall and the American government's leadership is nothing short of pathetic and embarrassing. This was entirely predictable. We've been talking about it. The news has been reporting on it for months and months and months. People have even speculated long ago that they were just trying, Russia, that is, were trying to ride this out until winter because they would have leverage, because they provide most of the energy, the gas needed, for energy in Europe. And so this was always, something they could bludgeon the Europeans with to give them leverage. And so here we are. And what have the Europeans done to become independent? What has America done to provide gas to Europe, to produce more, to offset this? This is the thing. We are ruled by the dumbest, and if not dumbest, the most evil people in modern American history, certainly. It's like Afghan. You have to wonder. It has to be on purpose at some point. It's like Afghanistan. Let's leave billions of dollars in our arms behind and then evacuate.
Yeah,
are you stupid?
None of this stuff makes any sense. I mean, you have companies like Cheniere Energy, who is exporting liquefied natural gas to Europe. But then you have a situation where Ukraine relied on nuclear power. Russia damages a nuclear facility. I mean, you have members of former, they're deceased now, leaders of Russian oil and gas companies who either questioned the war or did not support it. They're all like 8 families. They're dead. We know what Putin does. He kills his enemies. So, I mean, when you add that in and you take the problems occurring in the Russian economy right now, and with them turning up the screws, look, 3 years ago, Donald Trump warned the Europeans in that famous speech where he sat down across from NATO and the European leaders and says, hey, you better get yourself off this Russian gas, or there will come a time when it's going to be a problem. Well, you never hear the media giving Trump credit for being prophetic, but he was. And he literally called it out for what it was. And Drew, with the Russian economy the way it is right now, they're putting resources into that war. I think this whole Eastern Europe, Western Europe is going to be a mess come this winter.
Yeah, it is. I mean, look, I don't know what the Ukrainians are going to do. I don't know what the Europeans are going to. There's not a solution except to do what the Russians say. The Russians want sanctions lifted. So how desperate are the Europeans going to be? How desperate are even the Ukrainians going to be, who are cutting down trees for firewood ahead of winter, to deal with this? Because what is America offering in return? I mean, there's no, what's happening? The Chinese are buying, Russian oil and gas, and they're going to go siphoning it off and selling it, to these countries, and they have an alliance. So yeah. I just, I don't work for the Pentagon. I didn't go to West Point. I'm not over there in Ukraine fighting like that dummy that worked for MSNBC, putting on his flak jacket and pretending, he's whatever, G.I. Joe. But I think that all of us can look at this situation, and there's a lot of common sense things that should take place. But of course, we're ruled by the jesters of the court.
Well, let me add a couple of things here. We're talking about the European economy. The euro as a currency, folks, has fallen below 99 cents on the dollar. It's the lowest ever. When this currencies bounce generally between $1.20 and $1.50, but below a dollar, it creates structural issues for the Europeans. That you may think, well, how's that affecting me? Well, it affects Americans the following way. With the euro trading as low as it is, and with the European economy in recession or headed to it right now, a lot of U.S. companies that are multinational companies, it's going to affect those earnings. If the earnings are affected, it could affect jobs in this country. It could affect share price. So yes, will the U.S. be impacted? Not as much, but over the course of time, as we go through this winter, there's likely to be serious disruptions. News over the weekend, the Biden administration has asked for an additional $13.7 billion of aid for Ukraine. You're hearing stories now, Drew, where, my God, the loss of these Russian soldiers. I mean, it's just astounding. The numbers are greater than 50,000. Supposedly they lost 1,500 troops over the weekend. The number of armored tanks, personnel carriers, machines, equipment. I mean, you heard Zelensky. I heard him this morning speaking on CNBC, appealing for businesses to invest in Ukraine. I mean, I don't know what's really true, but boy, if you listen to news reports, independent reports, not just the U.S. mainstream media, you would think Ukraine is winning this war. I mean, Drew, is it possible they're going to defeat the Russians?
No, 0% chance. And I'll stand firm by that. It's never been possible from the very beginning. The sheer might of the Russian military. Look, Russia has not thrown everything it has at Ukraine. Okay. I mean, look, I can't explain everything. This is the most bizarre scenario I've ever seen in my life. You can't identify what anybody wants. You've got all this reporting out there. I mean, Russia is certainly experiencing heavy losses. But I don't like what's going on because, there's a threshold being crossed here, because on the one hand, I think every American can certainly sympathize with what Ukraine's going through. Russia, obviously is in the wrong invading Ukraine, but I feel like Zelensky and Ukraine as a whole are robbing us blind in the name of their cause. We have sent them so much money. There's no accountability for it. We do know, by the way, that Ukraine has long been historically a place of corruption. It's a place where people do go to wash their money. And so, I'm just tired of like the spigot not being turned off. I mean, we're just pouring resource after resource into Ukraine, 13.6 billion, 15 billion. And I guess the issue is maybe it would be a different scenario if we had things shored up at home. But it's like, as the head of household, if my family can't eat, If my family can't stay warm, if my family is struggling and has all these issues, and I am putting all of my attention on someone else's household to help them out, what does that say about me and my responsibility here? And we're not even doing both is the problem, right? I always say, if only the Democratic Party treated America as well as they treat Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, I take a little bit different approach. I mean, I generally have supported what the administration has done in Ukraine, but I do concur with your point on, look, everything's got to be disclosed, and we should be helping Americans out at the same time. Biden's idea of helping out Americans, student loan forgiveness, passing a $1.9 trillion bill first quarter of his administration, passing the Inflation Enhancement Act, albeit they call it the Inflation Reduction Act. It's not going to do anything to reduce inflation. I mean, folks, that's a complete misnomer. Inflation will come down when the Federal Reserve lets $95 billion a month run off its balance sheet, and it continues to increase interest rates, which is what has happened starting this month on the balance sheet runoff, and interest rates have been going up all year. So I don't give the administration any credit for that whatsoever. But I do believe that at a certain point in time, and I don't know what that time frame is, whether is it going to be this winter, but the Russians are suffering major casualties. Now, supposedly, I don't know if this is true or not, Drew, but there were reports saying the Russians had to buy equipment from the North Koreans. Now, I've been around a long time. I mean, never did I think in my lifetime I was going to see a headline, Russia to buy equipment from North Korea. Now, North Korea has the fourth largest military and military equipment in the world. A lot of folks don't realize that. It's number 4. So is it logical to assume they would have excess equipment? I guess so. But would you want to be going to battle with North Korean equipment? Not me. I mean, but apparently, again, if you believe these reports, and they're not being contradicted by the Russians, there does seem to be some validity, and they are suffering enormous losses in Ukraine. It will be interesting to see if this city, Kherson, is taken in the counteroffensive, because that will restore their access to the sea. It would be a crippling blow for Putin. Now, what's his response going to be? Who knows? I mean, it's so unpredictable, but a lot of people are turning up dead that oppose this war. He's lost in excess of 50,000 troops. They're having to constrict troops. They're having to tell people they're going to get bonuses, of which, by the way, their troops are not being paid. Supposedly morale is very low. I don't know. I mean, if you'd have told me that this war would be going on 9 months and Ukraine would be holding at the level it is right now, I would have sort of been shocked, but it couldn't be happening without support of NATO and the United States.
That's true. I think there's a bigger issue with Russia-Ukraine here too, because, okay, let's say that Ukraine ultimately prevails, which we all hope that's the case. Before our very eyes, the entire landscape of the world is changing as a result of this. And America is not taking advantage of this situation to be leaders in the world. Look, what does it say about North Korea that under Joe Biden, they are willing and eager to give their arms to Russia? China, all these alliances being formed, even Europe and Britain with a new prime minister there.
Right.
Which I wish her well. I hope she proves to be the candidate that Britain needs. She's being compared to Margaret Thatcher. I hope that's true. But she is saying, and I don't blame her, that she's not looking to be, worshiping the United States of America anymore. I'm paraphrasing,
Oh, but you're exactly right. Yeah.
And so we Europe's moving away from us. A lot of people can't rely on us, and they shouldn't. I would not. They would be fools to do so under this kind of leadership. And so I look at what's happening in Russia, Ukraine, and I say, okay, well, even if Ukraine wins, what does the world look like afterwards?
Yeah, and let me go back to a point you made about North Korea. Say what you want about Trump and his relationship with Kim Jong-un, but when Trump was president, we didn't have these North Korean threats like we're facing right now. And people mocked him for some of the commentary, but Trump literally went over there carrying a big stick, and you didn't see those missiles being fired. You would never have thought of Korean arms sales to Russia if Donald Trump was president. I mean, it just would not have happened. So again, folks, Trump gets a lot of criticism, but again, on the European gas warning, on the relationship with Korea, two hot spots. Look who was right, and now look what we're having to deal with. All right, let me shift a little bit to some domestic politics here. Okay. Give me your impression where we are House, Senate races, a couple polls out over the weekend. When I saw Patty Murray only up by 3 in deep blue Washington State, that was sort of ringing a bell. When I saw Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, only up 5 on Lee Zeldin, I'm saying, wait a minute, this is contrary to the media narrative that the Democrats are doing real well. When I saw Herschel Walker up on Raphael Warnock by a couple points, obviously within the margin of error, I'm saying, wait a minute here, something's not making sense. And yet I look at a handful of other polls, I see us down by 5 or 7 points in Arizona, North Carolina's close, Nevada's close. All these races turn out to be close. Drew, how do you handicap the midterms right now?
I think you got to tune out the media as best you can with these polls. I mean, look, how is it possible? I'll give an example. So Patty Murray, polls, I think just 2 weeks ago had Murray up by 18.
Right.
And so 2 weeks later now, it's just down to +3. It is what I mean. That's pretty seismic. I mean, what's happened over the last 2 weeks? I mean, Biden gave his divisive speech, but nothing's really changed. In the aggregate, I mean, everything that the Democrat Party stood for, abortion, the Roe v. Wade stuff happened long ago. So that just doesn't really make much sense to me that it could shift that much, right? If that other poll was correct. And then Hutchell, the same thing, was up by 24 points not long ago. I think that was 2 weeks ago, actually, the Hutchell poll.
Yeah. I don't get it either. That's why I wanted your perspective on it. It's a head scratcher for me. I mean, look, you and I both know Republicans can do well, but that good this soon? I mean, those folks are earthquake numbers. I mean, if we're really only behind 3 in Washington, and if we're only down 5 in deep blue, those are deep blue states, folks. We're not supposed to be within 3 to 5 points. And yet, if those numbers are true, oh my goodness, Drew, I've been downplaying what I think is going to happen in November. I've always said I think we're going to take about 20 House seats. The Senate could go either way. I don't know. If those numbers prove to be correct, the media could wake up on election day, the day after election, with some severe egg on its face.
Yeah, it could be 2016 on steroids, where it was a 99.9% chance expected of Hillary Clinton to win. And boy, that was a fun morning when I woke up.
Oh, boy, I still have the tape. Just the gloriousness of just seeing those people just streaming. Podesta says, hey, it's time to go home. It's time to go home. And everybody's like crying. What's going on? I don't get it. And then the other part of the country, Trump, was just celebrating, emphatically. All right, let me ask you a couple of other things here. I mean, some sad news, both on a couple fronts. Domestic policies, and then we'll sort of close it out here. We talked about what happened where people died at the border. Okay, 13 people killed crossing the border, and then 46,000 fentanyl pills. You said something to me pre-show, Drew. You said, share with our audience about when it's important to Democrats to talk about and what they really care about, their priorities.
Yeah, I mean, the Democrats, the party, and of course the voter base too, they claim to be the party of compassion, right? Part of the allure of the Democratic Party is that they claim that they are intellectually and morally superior to Republicans or conservatives. But they aren't really compassionate because they're selectively compassionate. This was a mass drowning what happened in the Rio Grande. 13 illegals died trying to cross the river. And there's not a peep. Now, when 13 Americans are killed in a mass shooting, there are immediate demands to pass legislation, even though it doesn't work and it's to, serve their agenda. But nonetheless, there's outrage that 13 people are dead and they have to solve the problem. They've got to take guns away, do whatever they have to do. There is no call for anything. And this is easily solvable. We know exactly why these illegal immigrants drowned trying to cross, because they were invited here by Joe Biden. But, the tally is, I don't know how many, probably thousands have died. But, you had the semi truck, those people that, died in the back of the truck. That was like 50 people, 13 drowning. So if the Democrats really care about life, if they really have a problem with death and this type of killing, well, they would immediately announce that the border is closed. They would make it known that none of you will be welcomed here. Your life will be lost for nothing because, we're not going to let illegal immigrants just come in here. You need to apply, go through the legal channels. And so, look, I am so tired of the Democrats using selectively tragedies to push their agenda. And this just exposes them, whether it's Chicago, whether it's this situation, they don't care about that.
I mean, we had a situation in Chicago over the weekend. Again, this is every holiday weekend. 55 people shot, 11 fatally. I mean, Drew, this is becoming the norm in Chicago and some of the blue cities. I didn't hear anything on the media about this. I mean, it's like if, as you said, a mass killing, my God, it's the Republicans' fault, God, guns, etc. But regular everyday life, the crime in these cities, the killing, I mean, and it just doesn't get the attention anymore. Now, what did get attention was this Memphis heiress. She goes out on a jog, and some career criminal ends up abducting her, killing her. Now this guy is sitting in a jail cell. She's deceased, all for the crime. It's heartbreaking, and yet we see this over and over and over. Terrible. All right, let me close it out with something. I got to chat. We got to put a smile on some people's face. We can't always talk about Biden and polls and some tough stuff. I just laughed over the weekend. I spent a lot of time in California. We do a show from California. Okay, hopefully I'll be back there in a couple of weeks. This story about California requiring people start to buy electric cars by 2035. I'm sitting here, I'm just sort of laughing, and then I hear 15 other states may tag along just because their laws are tied to California. Drew, I mean, the average cost of an electric vehicle in today's dollars is $66,000. What are they doing? I mean, what is this all? I look at it and I go, you cannot be serious that this has actually happened. And yet it is happening.
Yeah, look, California is the Venezuela of the United States of America. And what was so remarkable about this is that, a couple days after it was announced that they were going to force, exclusive sale of, electric vehicles by 2035, they're going to ban new sales of gas-powered vehicles by then. Well, 2 days later, look, it was 111 degrees where I am in Napa County yesterday. They told the electric vehicle owners that they shouldn't be plugging in their electric vehicles because there's not enough electricity. It's going to tax the grid. So here they are. They want to put all Californians on electric vehicles, and currently there's not enough electricity to power them. I mean, you have to be a foolish person to go along for this, So I mean, what a joke it is, I mean. Climate change is a whole nother issue that I could destroy, in 20 minutes, but that will save it for another day.
We could spend a whole show. I was just sitting there laughing. I'm saying, because right now, folks, electric vehicles make up about 16% in California. Their goal is to get to 35% by 2035. That's a noble goal, but telling people you can't sell electric cars can you imagine if the state was at 35% right now and there was no place to plug the car into? I mean, oh my God. Anyhow, folks, we try to add a little humor to it. And this was, I mean, Glenn Youngkin, the governor of Virginia, said, well, everybody move to Virginia. We're going to keep building. We're going to keep building gasoline-powered cars. I mean, you conceivably have a country where all the red states produce gas cars and the blue states the electric cars.
You know what they're going to have to do?
This is crazy. Turn on the college football. For those people that are college football fans, Alabama, Georgia looked great. Ohio State, Notre Dame played a tough game. Clemson looked okay last night. A lot of teams. It's fun that the season's off and going. Oh, I tell you, you got to throw a little humor at things every now and then because, my goodness, it's tough. Drew, listen, I know we hit some pretty tough topics today. Love having your commentary on. I'm going to close one other thing here. You saw a tragic story ahead of Bed Bath and Beyond. The guy jumps. Here's a guy, 52 years old, multimillionaire guy, doing great, runs a CFO of a public company, and he jumps out of an 18-story window, kills himself. I mean, think about this, folks. I mean, whatever you're doing out there, if you got a problem, don't do what this guy did, okay? I mean, it's just try to add a little humor, a little lightness in your life. Think about things that are positive, that make you smile, and Always remember, it may be dark today, but there's better days ahead. And I'm telling that the Republican Party, because I really believe we're going to have a good November coming up. 30 seconds, Drew. Close it out for me.
Well, I'm just looking for investors now. I've got an idea, money-making scheme, if you will. I want somebody to come on board with me and to develop a electric charging cord that's about 600 miles long. Because when California has electric vehicles here, we can power those suckers into another state's grid, because that's what we're going to have to do. So, we've got some time to think about this and devise it. But I think there's some hope there for some financial victory.
Maybe we can get some Democrats to contribute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, folks, that's it for today. Drew, thanks again for being with me. It's a lot of fun as always. Stay safe. Try to cool down out there in the great wine country of California. I know it's going to be toasting another couple of days. My brother's in that part of the country. I heard all about it the other day. So look, folks, we'll be back tomorrow. We're going to be tackling all the tough issues. We'll cut through the propaganda. Stay cool if you can. And we'll see you on Wednesday. Thanks for viewing today. Have a good evening.